everybody, it's Romania Black, and after last week, did you really think I was going to wait to watch episode 5 of ORB on the movements of the Earth? No, I've got a couple comments from episode 1 and episode 2, but I just couldn't wait, and especially after I went through episode 4 again, I realized that there was a good chunk that I maybe did not pay as much attention to in the discussion portion, so apologies on that. But I was like, man, I could talk a little bit more about that. Specifically, the letter that Nowak was reading at the start of the scene at the end. It had the phrase, oh, how do we say this? I want to find out before I tell you. If I say it, you all will laugh at me on the other side of your screens. So I'm going to say it is, I'm going to get the word here right. It's a word that was on the letter, and we're going to see how it's said.
Ojciec.
What?
Ojciec.
Ojciec. Ojciec means father in Polish. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But ojciec means to father or to in Polish. So basically, what I didn't realize at the end of last episode is Nowak reading at the start of that scene a letter from his daughter? We'll find out, right? It's been 10 years. So if she was a little baby, she'd be like I would imagine his daughter, since it's 10 years later, is between 10 and 14 years old. I'm going to guess, because he referred to her at the beginning back at the start of the series, and that was 10 years prior, and said he was doing everything for his daughter. So I would assume she's like a kid, so she's like a preteen, like 10 to 14. But if she was like 10 at the time when he was talking about it, maybe she's 20 now. We'll find out. Mm-hmm. We'll see. As far as the comments go, Putera Qual for episode 1 says, this anime is what people call Poland Saga. But nonetheless, it's one of my faves. Yeah, the moderators, Truck and Geen, are both moderating this series, and they did not have me read a lot of comments that were trying to talk about Poland's involvement in this series, because I don't want to know that yet. We're only on episode 5, right? But just knowing it's in Poland, maybe. Okay. I feel like if you know the history, it can spoil some things. That's definitely how I felt during Vinland Saga. I'm not a historian, so I'm not a historically inclined person, especially with European history. So I felt like the less I knew, the better as a reactor I was off, because you learn things as you go. So we'll see if that happens here. But then Truck had a few notes from episode 2 saying maybe Nowak's hair sticks up because it's greasy from the lack of washing, which, as gross as that sounds, is probably accurate. It's kind of like, dreadlocks and stuff are just like your hair has gotten so oily, it's just all come together. Nowak, it's medieval times. It probably is that it's just not washed. I'm like, you have an amazing voice and you're a tall blonde, but the hygienic times, right? So people seeing Nowak's bloody sleeves, because I talked about that, like, would that not be intimidating, may think it's animal blood or something. That maybe he's a butcher, or maybe it's so dried up it looks like mud rather than blood or something. Or maybe everyone just looks at it, thinks it's human blood. Anything is possible. Whichever it is, walking around with bloody clothes is such a power move. Yeah, I feel like it's not only an intimidation factor, and it's like one of those things that's intimidating and you don't have to say a word, but it could very well give off the impression that he's a butcher. Or I don't think in the episodes themselves it looks red. It looks like blood, and it's always fresh because he's always torturing people. But it could be that people just think he's a butcher, or they know and they're just like, let's not say anything. Otherwise, we could be next. Who knows? Since you opened the discussion on heliocentrism around the world, it brought to my mind that the Japanese word for heliocentrism is chidosetsu, which, rather than meaning sun-centric, heliocentrism, it means the earth moves theory. Chi is ground or earth, do is movement, and setsu is theory or rumor. I kind of find it interesting. While chidosetsu also means sun-centric astronomical models, it says it from the opposite way. The same with geocentrism. Tendosetsu, or sky, moves this theory. That's really cool. Also, this brings a certain difference in ORB. Whenever they say heliocentrism, they instead say the earth moves rather than the sun is the center. Which, well, the difference isn't that big, and it doesn't really change anything from interpreting those scenes, but I'm a nerd for exactly these kinds of things, and so this stuff fascinates me. Yes, I love translation. The concept of translation is so fascinating. It's literally an art form. So let's not have AI do it. So, but I do really love the idea of the earth moves as being the translation, because again, that's part of the blasphemy. They don't want you to believe the earth moves. It's that everything else moves around the earth, right? And they haven't really talked about gravity or anything like that yet. So it's so fascinating. So thank you all for the comments. Before we start, I want to give a shout out to our philanthropy tier over on Patreon, to thank you all, everybody on Patreon that supports the channel. Y'all are rock stars. You're amazing. Doesn't matter what tier you're in, you all are supporting the channel and you are fantastic. So thank you. If you don't have money to join Patreon, I get it. In this economy, I get it. But if you like the videos, if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, if you comment on the videos, that helps the algorithm, that helps me out, and I appreciate that a lot as well, right? And plus, who wouldn't want to talk about this series? It's amazing. So I do give shout outs in my videos to those that are in the philanthropy tier. So I want to give a shout out to Alex Cornejo, to Be Happy, to Bisa, to Damage3245, to Dana, to Devorin, to Daniel, to Destiny Marie, to Danger Zone, because I have to say it that way, Ichu, Eric, Fisho, Ghostly Turnip, Elfreya, Liam Polzel, Linden, Mochi-kun, Murphew, Willie Morris, Sunspots, Shimoyama, as well as Alyssa and Dawood Knight. Thank you all so much for your support. It's greatly appreciated. All of my love. So yeah, I'm excited. We met last episode. We met Oczy and Gras. Both of them having their trials and tribulations, and they've met a heretic who just maybe is from the House of Raffle. So. And he's like, you need to go to the mountains, young men, and find your truths. So Gras seems like he's definitely wanting to do that, based on what we found out about him last week. But Oczy is probably going to end up going because why not? So Huckleberry's at my feet, so he's going to need to be a good boy. And we're going to get started here and see what we get. So we're going to start Orbs on the Movement of the Earth, episode 5. And we are going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Boy, we're not wasting any time on killing off these characters, are we? The moment that I saw this episode was called Even If I Die, the World Will Continue, I was like, oh, well, hell. Somebody's gonna die. Somebody's gonna die in this. So I didn't bring Whiteboard Kun out for this episode because I feel like a lot of the stuff that we can talk about in this episode, we need to give Whiteboard Kun a break this week. I feel like we can talk through this episode fairly well because it is a pretty straightforward episode. We meet the guy finally, the blonde man, the OP, that honestly, outside of Hubert and Raffle, he has fascinated me so much. Give me all the blondes, show, keep him coming. But I'm really excited to see what he will do. He seems a very good foil for Oczy's character, which I'm very curious about because honestly, Oczy and Gras were not exactly, I wouldn't call them foils of each other. They were different, but they both had a lot of similarities. Whereas I feel like Oczy and Badini, or is it Badini? Yep, I think so. They're going to have a lot of clashing personalities just from the offset of just seeing how they've been described, right? You have this stern, like hard as stone monk that is not known for his welcoming spirit and has been, his contrarian thought has gotten him down a peg. And then you have Oczy, who is he's a sheeple. He's literally a sheeple that will follow anything, but has the heart of a golden retriever. So it's like, what do we do with him? So I think they could be interesting to bounce off of each other. I'm sure they have that. I say because they have the stereotypical blonde and black-haired ship like trope with them that I'm like, So we'll see. We'll see where it goes. But I want to talk about Nowak in this. I feel like my theory is Nowak is going to be our thread character we follow from start to end of the series. I feel like that's going to be Nowak's purpose, is that he's going to be the through person. And I don't want in the comments to know generalizations about his character. I just want to know based on what we've seen so far. Because it can be very easy, I would understand, if you've watched this whole series, knowing how far he goes, to like give a generalized standpoint about Nowak as a character. But we really honestly, we don't know too much about his character. We learned a lot in episode 3 about him and the fact that he surprisingly has a little bit more ties to the church and their beliefs than I gave him credit for. Because honestly, he just gives the vibes of coasting. He is coasting. Nowak's like, I don't quite believe in this system, but I know that this is the popular system. Everybody's following this system. I don't believe in it. I feel like I'm going to have to get Whiteboard Coon. Why do I do this? I say I'm not going to get Whiteboard Coon, and then I change my mind. I do this every time. I start to talk without Whiteboard Coon, and the Whiteboard Coon like beckons me from the shadows, and it's like, bitch, you need me. So we're back. Okay, so what I want to talk about is I feel like right now there's like a spectrum, if you will. It makes a cross, an axis, if you will, seems relevant to this conversation. But anyway, I want to talk about kind of where I feel the characters are at this point, the ones that we've met that are relevant and have been relevant. So we have here on the latitude, we have cares a lot, not a lot of faith. So there's a spectrum of whether they care a lot about either the servitude of the church or stars and shit. Or stars are the shit, right? I realized as I was writing this, I should have flipped it and had the stars up here and the church down here. That's not what ended up happening. Didn't want to rewrite it. So yeah, so on this spectrum, we have cares a lot versus not a lot of faith. Then you have the servitude or devotion to the church, and then stars are the shit. That's down here. So with that being said, I thought it was interesting because the heretic man that gives them, he's kind of this is our belt of Orion here, sort of. The heretic man that gives his necklace that he somehow got from raffle, who knows how, not important, but wish we could find out, but not important. And my dog wants me to play with the toy because it is important, so I'm down here like squeezing it from him. But he's kind of in the middle. He likes the stars and shit. It's hard to gauge whether he cares a lot or doesn't have a lot of faith, so we just put him right in the middle. If I can't exactly gauge where they are, they're going to go on the axes, right? So then you had Raffle. Raffle honestly did not have a lot of faith. He was all about the stars and shit, but he was fully prepared. Like, he was going to lie about his devotion to the church and his pursuit of theology. Like, he didn't care. He didn't have a lot of faith in that. He was like, whatever, I'll do whatever I got to get through this world and make it easy. But, you know, a lot of that was a front. We've all talked about this. We know it. Whereas Hubert did care a lot. He did care a lot. And he did have faith. But it was just faith in a different system than what the church believes in. So Hubert was all about the stars and shit, and he cared a lot, whereas Raffle was just in it for the science. He wasn't in it for the faith, necessarily. So I thought it was kind of cool that they both were on this side of this spectrum of like our y-axis, but they just were not near the servitude of the church, okay? Then you have where Gras fits in on this. Gras did work with the system. So he knows nothing about the stars, right? So I put him closer towards the middle because he doesn't seem to have a lot of faith at this point because of what's happened to his family, of his suicide attempt, everything else. Like, he doesn't have a lot of faith. He's just like, eh. But he also is not really devoted to the church either. He's kind of in this middle ground where he's kind of agnostic. He doesn't know what to do, what he wants to do. And doesn't matter now because he's dead. So, but he was in the middle here. Ringo Starr, Podaki, I put him actually in the middle, and I know that sounds weird because you're like, oh, but he should be way up here with his servitude of the church. I put him towards the middle because of the books he kept, because he still had that aspect of him that you could tell wanted to study the stars, but he couldn't because he knew of the punishment that he would receive, and his fear of death was stronger than his ability to serve the church. So, to just let go of it fully, to let go of the astronomy fully. So I would put Ringo Starr right here towards the middle because he's more on the servitude side than Gras, but he's still, you know, he's closer to the middle because it's hard to gauge, like, how much did he actually care about the church? How much of it was just a front so he wouldn't be caught and killed? It's hard to say with what we got from him. We can just speculate like we've done in episodes 1 through 3, but it is what it is. So then we have Akshi. Akshi I have up here as he does want to have devotion to the church because that's what he's been told over and over again. But honestly, Akshay doesn't really care. He honestly does not have a lot of faith. He really doesn't, because it is tested in this episode, and Gras calls him out and is like, you actually don't care that much about the church. You're just terrified by what they've told you will happen if you don't support it. So that's why you're kind of this loyal little minion, because you don't have the confidence or ability to think rationally about anything else. And so that's why he's there. Now, what would be curious is if Badini was in the same boat as Akshay. If personality-wise, they were totally different people, but on this spectrum, if Badini was like, I'm serving the church, but I don't have a lot of faith either. Like, it'd be cool if him and Akshay were in the same boat and they just didn't realize it. Twould be neat. Then we have Damien. Damien is one of the monks that's with Nowak, and Damien seems like he's highly servicing to the church, and he does care a lot, because he gets on to Nowak at the beginning of this episode being like, why don't you care? And Nowak's like, that's not your job to ask. And he's like, well, I wonder if Damien was the one at the beginning of the series that was questioning in episode 2 why Nowak got away with what he did, and the other monk was like, well, he used to be a mercenary and the bishop likes him, and Damien's like, but the church says we can't support people like this, and they're like, well, we are for him. I wonder if that's the same guy, and if he holds a little bit of a grudge. We'll see. Nowak is interesting, because after episode 3, I would definitely put him up here with devotion to the church. He does not seem remotely interested in the stars and shit at all. Doesn't seem to care, even though he's shooketh to his Buddhists from Raffles' statements. But here's the thing. As of right now, it's hard to gauge whether he cares or not. I think he cares out of necessity because he wants to help his daughter, but do I think he personally cares? Well, kind of, because he takes such offense to what Raffles says and it shakes him so much. If he didn't care, that wouldn't bother him, but it does. So it's interesting to see, like, I feel like he's in the middle of, he does care enough, but he's not completely out of faith. He's just riding that middle line and serving the church for the time being. So we'll see if with Akshay, Nowak, and Badini, if that changes, but we'll see where that goes to from here. So Nowak is just such an interesting character. And Damien's like, you need to take this serious. He's like, oh, come on. I will say this. I've gotten used to Nowak's hair now. It does look like it's a little bit cleaner than it was 10 years ago. But if that's true or not, I don't know. But yeah, he's like, oh, come on. And then Damien's like, this heretic was assigned to Peter. You can't just loan him to me for transfer duty. And he's like, for a long time. I like Damien questioning. He's like, for a long time now, I've been wondering, you're so complacent. Are you defending the sanctity of faith? And I love that Nowak kind of looks over and he's like, oh God, why do I have to talk to you about this now? Because, yeah, I feel like Nowak's just coasting. He's just like, I just do my job. It's a 9 to 5. I go home at the end of the day. What more do you want from me? Am I supposed to love it? And I think Damien does. I think Damien has the faith. And he's like, why aren't you being just as faithful? And it's like, well, what can we do? What can we do? So yeah. And he's like, oh, I didn't mean. And then we get to where the other driver gets knocked off. I didn't realize that the carriage they were driving was the one in front of Nowak and Damien, which feels by design now, so that if they tried to stray off the path, they could take him out. Damn it. Every time in the anime, doesn't matter if it's anime, a Western, whatever, horses got it rough, y'all. Horses got it rough. That horse, as soon as he pulled out that crossbow, I'm like, oh, you're going to fire it into the tent and hit one of the guys? Nope, we're going to kill that horse, which is objectively the smartest thing to do in that instance. But my only complaint about this episode, is, damn it, was it dark. I was like, are we watching Game of Thrones season 8? Because it was really hard in the darkness to see what the hell was going on. And I'm realizing I can't alter that, just the playback speed. And I'm like, well, damn it. So yeah, it was a really dark first half of the episode. And by design, because there are parts of the episode that are super bright. So I'm like, this was by design that this happened. I'm like, okay. But they could have lightened it up just a wee bit. We could have seen the rain even if it was lightened, but so they end up hitting the heretic. with the crossbow, I believe, or he gets like staked to the ground. What a crash. Yeah, he gets like impaled. He's like, well, we can't be saved now. And so then he goes after Oczy, which Oczy tries to be like, who, me? I was ambushed. And he immediately notices that locked in. Nowak is locked in. I'm like, Oczy, my dude, you tried to talk your way out of it, which is admirable, but that man could kill you in an instant. Do not think he could not. He's a freaking ex-mercenary. So yeah, Nowak was just ready to throw down hands because it really didn't matter to him. And I just like, he's just focused. Lust from Full Metal Alchemist would be all about Nowak in this episode with how calm and focused his eyes are. Right, he would be. So Oczy tries to surrender and says, please have mercy, I was wrong. And I like that Nowak doesn't know what to do. Nowak's like, what? It felt like Frieza in Dragon Ball Z Abridged, where Frieza like counts off all the phrases in that parody of how many times somebody said, no, stop, we'll stop your dastardly ways. And he's like 476. And then Goku says something ridiculous and Frieza's like, that's a first. So I love that Nowak's like, I don't know what to do with you. No one's ever just outright surrendered. Like no one's been that spineless in all of my years. And so then he gets out. He's like, what were the rules for voluntary surrender again? Now here's the thing. I think that what Nowak does here is pretty smart because when he talks to Damien later, he says, oh, those guys can't read English. We're fine. Now he could have known that outright, but I wondered if the piece of paper he was reading was actually the letter from his daughter, and he was just testing to see if Oczy would notice, and Oczy did not notice it wasn't the rules, but it was in fact some other piece of paper, and he was thinking, okay, this guy can't read what I'm reading, so even if they find all of Raffles' documents, even if they find anything from the heretics, they can't read it. What are they going to do with it? And I'm like, we're going to talk about that in a hot second. But I'm like, okay. So yeah, he's like, what were the rules for voluntary surrender? And he's like, exercise your own judgment. He's like, that's the biggest pain of all. I want to talk about that. So Oczy's whole thing is that he wants to follow. He wants to follow and not make his own decisions. Which Gras challenges him in this episode that he has to make his own decisions. That's part of it, right? What's interesting is that Nowak is the same. In this moment, Nowak's like, I don't want to make this choice. I don't want to do that. And I think they come at it from two different ways. Whereas Oczy doesn't want to make his own decisions because he doesn't know what the consequences are, and he doesn't want to gamble on the consequences because what if they're really bad? And he's afraid. And he's afraid of, if the unknown happens, what do I do? I feel like Nowak's fear of making a choice and not having other people tell him what to do is because he knows how strict the society is. And Nowak is looking at it from a place of experience where his fear is based on, oh, I've seen all the shit this organization can do. I don't want to jeopardize that. I've got a kid. So I'm going to do whatever you tell me to do because then I won't fall out of line. You can't get mad at me for doing what you told me to do. They could, but he's like, you're not likely to do that. Whereas Oczy, his hesitation is more to do with just the fear of not going to heaven. It's more simplistic, honestly. But I thought it was fascinating that they both are very similar in that vein. So he's like, well, you double-crossed us once, and I can't use you, so you might as well go away. And then the heretic steps in. I mean, he already was impaled, so at that point, why not? How he got the necklace, though, he's like, history needs you. Take this. These people are just martyrs left and right, sacrificing themselves for the cause of knowledge and exploration and the increasement of curiosity. How he got that necklace, we'll never know. There's a number of ways he could have gotten it. The guard could have taken it from Raffles' body before he burned it because he thought it was interesting. And that was like, oh, I don't want to get burned that up. Or Raffle could have taken it off knowing it could have gotten burned and hid it somewhere in the jail cell, and then the heretic got a hold of it, or it passed down to him somehow. Who knows? Regardless, he ends up going away. And man, Nowak, as Akshi is running away, Nowak was just going to be like, whoo, whoo, and get him in the back. And then Gras stepped in and was like, bitch, no, and swung with a sword. That took some skill, by the way, for his sword to deflect that. That took some skill. Holy shit. And then Nowak is just like, huh. I feel like at that point, Nowak's like, you know what? Game recognizing game. I'm going to step off and let you have this because I can't say anything. And Damien's like, why don't you go after him? And that's when he's like, they can't even read. They can't read. So I liked it at the beginning when he's like, well, shouldn't we go after them? And he goes, it's not worth. And he stops because Damien's already got on to him for not caring. And he's like, it's not worth chasing these guys. They're not going to do anything. So instead of getting on Damien's bad side, he says, well, I'd only get in trouble for using more arrows. He deflects the blame and kind of deflects it back to the church, oddly enough. And he says, besides, the thing we need to secure is dead in front of us. Those guys can't read. So what's the worst they can do? They don't have the brains for heresy. And honestly, with Akshi, that's maybe true. That's an insult to Gras, but maybe true for Akshi. But the thing that is so funny about that is that Nowak's like laziness of not wanting to go after them, I feel is going to make all the difference in this. Because even though they can't read the text that they find, they're smart enough to figure out, what if we gave it to somebody that could? And that's an interesting prospect because I don't think Nowak considered that, because that's not something Nowak would do. Nowak would never give up knowledge to someone else or give someone something that would give them gain over himself, because that's not a survival tactic. Like, he's operating, working for the church because his family needs it to survive. And doing otherwise does not compute, right? So we get there for after the intro, which I'm trying not to pay too close attention to because I don't want to get too spoiled. But we get back to where we left off at the end of episode 3 with them getting to the chest. And I really liked Gras, damn it. I liked him. He grew on me this episode, which should have been a sign. He grew on me and I was like, oh man, because I like that he's like, I would do it all over again. He's like, I would make the same decision if I had to do it again, because I feel like his brush with death and losing his family, he's like, I really have nothing to lose. Sorry about you, Akshi. You have a lot to lose, apparently. But he's like, no. And he's like, that's why my apology is a bit insincere. And Akshi's like, oh, I understand. I'm like, I don't think you do, sir. So they found the chest with all the documentation in it. And there are 2 letters instead of just one. The one is from Raffle and the one is from the heretic. Now, Akshi cannot read. Akshi is incapable of reading, which is problematic. If you're trying to navigate a world of intellectualism without being able to read, that's hard. And it feels like Gras can kind of read. He can draw the diagrams and write things out, so he knows it. But he says he doesn't know Latin. So that's a problem. If you don't know Latin and all the documents are written in it, you got to find somebody to translate. And then he says, well, I know a monk that would possibly be able to translate it and use it. And he's been kind of demoted from being a deacon because of his contrarian thoughts. So he might be into stars and shit. Let's find out. So, but the thing that gets me is I kind of wanted Gras to have more of a reaction to the sun and the earth and everything. But I think in the moment they were just looking at the documents and not really paying much attention. So in the recent ones, we have the heretic saying, I did not create the contents, but I'm going to record the story of this discovery. And as someone that's interested in astrology, I made a daily habit of observing the heavens. And I love the idea that he's evolved the script. He's gone back and recalibrated the calculations and changed it ever so slightly. I'm like, that's so cool. I also love the idea that Hubert and whoever else made multiple ways for those documents to be found. It wasn't just the necklace. Because that's what I was afraid of. I was like, well, if the necklace gets lost, then they'll never find out where the chest is. But it's so cool to know that no, it's literally on the rock faces surrounding it. Like you can find it that way. But the cool thing is, unless you were into astronomy, into the stars, knew what Orion's belt was, you may not get the reference or symbol at all. And then you can't find it. So unless Nowak's into his astronomy, he may never figure out where the spot is, right? And then it shows them getting back to the chest. So yeah, but though the contents of the chest were incomplete, it was clear they told me that they could change the history and fate of mankind. I can say my life was fortunate for having discovered them. And that kind of shakes Akshay to be like, to see him happy in death. He's like, but why? Why would you be? And he's like, for further details, I ask you confirm the materials herein. Selfishly, I too have adjusted multiple calculations. That is all. So Akshay can't fully read the letter, but he gives it to Gras to read as they're going through and checking the bridge, which seems to be out. The bridge infrastructure in this series is for shit. These people need to get on that, because I would be terrified crossing a bridge and it suddenly start to collapse. No. That is terrifying. And Akshay, of course, is like, well, we should get rid of the... Akshay tearing out that necklace and leaving it on the edge of that bridge. I was ready to... Akshay is a sweet little bean, but I was ready to clock him. I'm like, do you realize that is Hubert and Raffles' necklace? You take that back, sir. I was like, oh my God, that necklace had my heart like so anxiety ridden this episode. I was like, do not lose the necklace. I want Nowak to end up with it at the very end. Even if Nowak doesn't believe in the stars by the end, I want him to end up with it. I want Nowak's story to come full circle, and I'm so excited to see if it does or not. I'm so invested in that, so we'll see. But I was like, how dare you? And he's like, well, belong to a heretic after all. And Gras is like, it's a clue, sir. Nancy Drew, you are not. He's like, take it back. And he's like, okay, let's go. The sad part about all of this, well, first we have the note. And Gras is like, let me read it. And I'm glad Gras can read it. Before we get to the sad part about the stars and Akshay, can we talk for a hot second about Raffle being a damn legend and taking no credit for himself? He didn't leave his name. He didn't leave any reference to him being responsible for the calculations or improving upon Hubert's name. It almost makes it more timeless and more legendary that there's not a name attached. It's a mystery, right? It reminds me of, this is really nerdy English thing, but in like modern language association format, when you do MLA format, if you have a site that's like a hospital site or organization site, a lot of times on their websites, they won't put authors to their notes. And usually when we're detecting credibility for a source, one thing I tell my English classes is you want to make sure there's an author, because if somebody won't attach their name to it, why? And that may mean it's not credible if there's not a name. So we talk about that. But with hospital websites, you're trying to present information that is medically related, and you want it to be timeless. And not timeless in the sense of how it's been posted, because hospitals update all the time with advances, with updates with medicine, things like that. They update constantly. But you want it to appear professional and timeless without an author attached to it, because that makes it feel more just like objective, right? The information is more objective if it's just stated there without an author. Now, that can be considered not credible, but if it's in a credible location like a hospital, then you feel like that content is valid. So this is a similar situation where you have Raffle and Hubert leaving their documentation and their work on heliocentrism, but without their names attached to it, even though we would love for Raffle to get credit, of course, for Hubert to get credit, of course, the fact they left their names out just goes to prove that for them, it's about heliocentrism passing on and the legacy of it, not the legacy of themselves. And I love them for it. Oh, so good. I offer you the secrets of the starry sky. And he's like, if you by chance feel, the profit, feel the endeavor to profit from this. His support has been very valuable. Please make sure that, what did he say there? Give 10% to Pataki. The fact that the man that turned him in to death, he still asked. And that morning when Raffle went to deposit the contents of the letter, he knew he was going to get turned in. He knew it was going to happen. But the fact that he still asks for 10% to be turned into Pataki, just what a legend. Raffle's amazing. From beyond the grave, he's still securing a spot as best character. And he gives his address. And I would be interested to know if Ringo Starr is still around. That would be interesting to know. Or if he died already. I don't know. Or if he ended up starting the cult back. I don't know. He says, as far as these documents go, he's like, I don't understand the figures or can read Latin, but with the circumstances we're in, we probably can't go back to the village, and this seems pretty significant, so the reward could be big. He's like, objectively speaking, we can't go back to the village and earn a living, so selling this to the right guy might earn us some money. We need that to survive, so I don't think it's a bad idea to sell it. And then Akshi's like, well, how are you going to find this right person to give this stuff to? And he's like, I have somebody in mind, which is interesting. He's like, the monk that told me about the planets. So Badini is the one that taught Gras about the stars and shit. Look at him. You know what? I say Gras isn't into the stars and shit, but he is. He's into Mars. So we can put him down a little bit. Let's put him, he's not quite the heretic man, but Gras is down here. It's like this is our funeral. They are among the stars. Oh my God. They've passed, and like Mufasa and his forefathers before him have become stars in the night sky. And they are stars that now can be looked upon by these people up here. Oh man. That's symbolic and sweet. I'm curious. But yeah. So Badini. He's like, you're going to discuss heresy of the monk? He's like, he's no ordinary monk. He's a cool monk. He was demoted for slandering the church. And Akshi's like, I don't know if we should trust him. He's like, well, let's go then. I think what I was going to talk about is the moment where Akshi says he can't look at the stars. Because the whole time that this is being filmed, the whole time this scene is taking place, it's super dark. But maybe one of the reasons why they made it super dark was to highlight the stars that are around them. It's beautiful. Everything is gorgeous there. And Akshi refuses to look up because of his trauma with the church. And I'm like, I want him to look up at the damn stars. I do. And so Akshi says, my head is spinning. Now that I've come this far, now that I have time to think, I don't see why I should go with you. Which, is valid and fair. And so then he tells him, will you decide for me, Gras? I think that's so fascinating. This idea that he wants, the hard choices made for him. There's so much to talk about with that. But life or death decisions are hard, obviously. And unfortunately, we live in a society. We live in various cultures where there is a lot of authoritarianism. There's a lot of fascism. There's a lot of people making decisions for you. And I see all the time on social media, people being like, why would people follow this? Why would they want to be a part of it? And one of the answers is a lot of people are followers. They're not leaders. They are followers. They do not want to make choices for themselves. They do not want to do the work. They don't want to do the research. They don't want to take the action because there's the responsibility and consequence that comes with it. They're like, I'll just be a follower and fade into the background and just be complacent and complicit. And that's what their prerogative is. But there's others that are like so scared of the consequence that they just fall in line because they're too afraid of the consequence and they don't want to gamble or risk it. And they're like, if I can get away with it, I'll just fall in line and do whatever you want me to. And that's kind of where Akshay is. Akshay has ideas and has thoughts of himself, but he is afraid of the consequences of them. And so he just falls in line. And it's so easy to do. It is. That's why like it's so easy to do. Like being independent and seeking answers and doing your own research, that does require work. And a lot of people don't want to do the work, or they feel they're too tired for the work. And it's like, it's crazy. And so Gras is like, okay, you're not going to make a decision for yourself. You're not going to think for yourself. I need a companion. You're going to join me. And he does. He does without question, even though he doesn't believe in what they're doing. So he asks him to find the North Star because he injured his eye. And Akshay's like, I can't do it. And Gras is like, Gras realizes, oh, your trauma's a little bit more than I thought. He's like, I know it sounds strange, but if I look up, the stars appear to me like eyes looking down on humanity. I honestly wonder if Akshay experiences some form of synesthesia, maybe by seeing the eyes looking down on him. I wonder if it is like a form of synesthesia and it just is overpowering for him. And he's like, before that, I could look at the stars, but actually, and he says, I think I enjoyed it. And poor Gras is like, oh my God, this guy, I feel like in that moment, Gras decided, he's like, I'm probably going to die. And when I do, I'm going to make sure you go on. Because Gras had lost that will to live and had tried to hurt himself. And then it failed. And then he was regretful. And so now he's like, I don't want you, Akshay, to go on believing that you're not, that your life is hopeless and that this world has no meaning. He's like, no, I want to pass on the love of this world that you need to have. Even though I didn't fully have it, I want you to have it. I want you to have a hope. And it feels a lot like Hubert when Hubert was trying to convince Raffle about the beauty of the world. And Hubert's like, no, the world's beautiful. Here's all these things. And Raffle just hadn't looked at it that way. So, there's a lot of really good shots of Akshay in this episode. The one where he says he used to like the stars. The one where he's looking down and the stars are all above him and he says it's too scary. And he's like, well, it was something you enjoyed, right? And he's like, yeah, but now I can't look at it because of the eyeballs. He's like, I know what it's like to lose the things you love. Compared to that, my problem is minor. And he's like, well, for you, it's a major problem. But in your case, I'm sure they were never lost. They're probably in heaven right now. That was a little bit like, I was like, ugh. I was like, I don't know if Gras has a lot of faith, and so I'm sure he appreciates you saying that, but I don't know. Had his suicide gone through, the church definitely said he would not be visiting them, but maybe now that he's done his good deed and helped Akshay, who knows? But I feel like Gras had a very good grasp on the situation of like, you only live once and I managed to squeeze out an extra life. So I'm going to take this and use it to the fullest. And he's like, until recently, this world was where I met my family and I hated it because I lost them. I don't want to deny the world though that gave them to me. So he's like, I want to view the world positively once more. It's so wild. It's so crazy. You would think that these concepts are so novel, and you would think they're not novel. You would think they'd be so simple and self-explanatory. You're like, you should view the world positively and think that it's a good place to live. Why is that hard? But in some faiths and in some mindsets, yeah, that is hard. There's a lot of people that I know that when I've had conversation with them, they would rather view the world negatively and be like, well, this is shit. And I'm like, but this cool thing's happening. And they're like, yeah, well, you're just being a little like, they basically would talk shit about you because you're trying to point out the positivity of the world, which is so wild to me. So wild to me. But I could not be part of the faith as extreme as Akshay, because to think that the world is all corrupt and heaven is the only answer. It's like you're literally behind him is the universe and he's turned his back to it. And it's wild. It's wild. But yeah, no. He's so absorbed in this. He's like, that's God's will. The great figures in history have told us that. That line got me so hard in the episode because I was like, there it is right there. It's not God didn't come down to you and tell you that. He told, like, great figures in history have told you that God said that. But again, like we talked about in episode 1, the Bible is written by men, by humans. And it's not only that, but I'm reading it in English. So it's been translated. My translation of it is different than someone else's translation of it. That's different than somebody else's translation of it. And the meaning changes. So at that point, it's like, what is the ultimate interpretation? And I guess if you have the original copies, sure. But at some point, there's something always lost in translation. And it waters down every step it goes. So at what point are what you've been told actually still accurate? And he's like, have you given up on the world? And he's like, yes. I feel like Oczy is the product of 1984. Honestly, it's like the idea of Big Brother and all the eyes looking down upon him. He's like, well, we're all going to die anyway. So there's like a nihilistic aspect. So it's like, well, we're either going to end up in heaven or hell. So might as well just try our best to get into heaven and do nothing else. It's like, and Gras is like, well, screw that. He's like, nope. Heaven is our only hope. So then why did the heretic risk his life and his place in paradise to honor this world? Humans die. What would be the point in loving this world that will eventually leave? We all die, and all that remains is a world without us. How could there be hope in that? But literally the necklace and the books, everything that's being left behind for the next generation is a sign of that hope, right? It's a symbol of it, and it keeps it going. So it just, this show and the symbolism it has, it's just so good. I love it. So they get to this bridge. Every time when stupid Oczy was like, I guess we're safe now, I'm like, jinxed, we'll die. I thought they were going to get sniped by a crossbow on the bridge. I thought that at any moment, I thought that I knew Oczy was going to be okay because he has to end up with the monk because it's in the OP. But Gras, I was like, oh, Gras is going to die. But I thought he was going to get like stabbed in the heart with an arrow halfway through. No, not the case. So yeah, he's like, and then this is where Gras is like, look, we're at a crossroads. You need to either do one of two things. Take the book, return it to the village. They might let you go back and keep being, this is a red pill, blue pill moment. And you can go back to living your life, or you can take this book, go find the monk, and try to do something different. Man, I loved the composition of them hanging on, the idea of the book of astronomy and the calculations being what's between them as they're connected by that book. And then when he was about to fall, grabbing the necklace by the toughest leather strap in history, my friends. The toughest leather strap in history. Wild. And yeah, and then poor Gras. The second option is to place your hope in this world. And he gives him the book as he's falling. Oh, it's such a good scene. It's so good. I'm just like, oh. And the thing that's so crazy about it is that Gras looks so happy in this moment. Gras looks so happy. He looks so happy to be like, finally, he's like, he gets the control of his life to do whatever he wants. And he's like, this is what I've chosen to do. You take the book and go now. Oh. And then he's left Oczy to go figure it out. I loved everything about this. This entire scene on the bridge, it was so good. And he's like, you'll figure it out. Oh. But even if I die, the world will continue. I just have to give hope to the people that I'm leaving it behind to. Yep. And then that's when he says, that means I can pass the torch. In a world that is full of loss, that is one way that hope is born. Yeah, as long as somebody's there to pass the torch, as long as those ideas continue and spread from one person to the next, then your hope is always going to be there. Oh, Gras was such a real one. MVP. And then he's like, well, how do you know I'm going to do this? He's like, I looked in your eyes. You're not ready to go to heaven. I'm like, oh. He's like, you're not ready to die yet. You're too afraid. You'll do it. God, it was good. But poor Gras. He's stuck on the toughest piece of leather ever and then fell. Oh, this is my fate. I feel like in a way, Gras was happy with that because he got to choose his fate and actually go through with it when he's already tried once and it failed. So, and then poor Oczy when he finally crawls himself back up and has the necklace and the book. Akshi's design is so crazy because he just looks like he hasn't slept in like 20 days. So we go to the church and the people are like, oh, you're so compassionate, Father. We love hearing your stories. Unlike that subdeacon from the other day, he's nothing like you. He may have been praised in the city, but he has no compassion. He's not a country folk like you. Although the way these monks have decorated their like hairdos, ridiculous. So then, who's this young stranger that shows up in our parts? Why, it's Oczy, and he asks to go see Bodini. Bodini is fascinating. His eyes look glazed over, like he can't see well out of them, or they have cataracts. I don't know if that's the case. He has an eye patch, so he's lost an eye, potentially, allegedly. He has all these scars, like he's been in battle. I wonder if he's an ex-mercenary, like Nowak, but instead he became a monk, but is also influenced by the stars and shit, unlike Nowak. I'm curious to see more of his character so we can know how to compare it with Nowak and with Oczy, because I feel like there's a triangle of spectrum there, so that could be interesting. But yeah, and then he comes out and sees like, who are you? The setup of these two meeting, it feels so epic. It feels like the melding of worlds. And then he's like, oh, and what do you want? And he has the necklace hanging from his belt loop. And Akshi's like, look, you're not going to believe this even if I tell you. I'm curious if Bodini knows what's going on, if he knows about the book and heliocentrism and what his thoughts are going to be. I'm curious. I'm very curious, but y'all, I can't believe Gras is dead. I mean, I'm not surprised, but I can't believe how he went out this episode. That was crazy. I don't want Akshay to die next episode, but we're going to find out next week if this is an every 3 episode instance where we lose somebody and have to start again. I don't know. There are 25 episodes, so you couldn't do it every 3 episodes because that would be 8 different storylines. And that would only be 24 episodes. So I don't think they're going to do that to us. I don't think we'll have 8 different storylines, but I don't think we're going to follow Akshay forever. Or Bodini forever. I don't know. Now it's a question of which one of you two is going to die first. I guess we'll find out. So in any case, thank you all so much for watching this reaction. I'm so curious to hear your thoughts and comments down below. ORB is still amazing. ORB is fantastic. And I'm excited to see what's going to happen next week. So with that being said, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back real soon with more of ORB on the movements of the earth. Bye.